They told you the story, but they didn't tell you the truth. Every mystery leaves a record. Find it here.
Imagine waking up one morning and your neighbor accuses you of being a witch. Within hours, soldiers arrive at your house. You are dragged away, thrown into a cold prison, and put on trial for a crime that no one can prove. Your only evidence: fear, rumors, and accusations. This may sound like a horror movie, but it really happened in America. In the year 1692, a small village called Salem, Massachusetts, became the center of one of the most terrifying chapters in American history. More than 200 people were accused of witchcraft. Dozens were imprisoned, and 20 innocent people were executed, all because of panic, superstition, and fear. But here's the most disturbing part. Many historians believe the trials were not really about witches at all. They were about power, jealousy, and revenge. Uncover the shocking truth behind the Salem Witch Trials, the event that terrified colonial America and still fascinates people centuries later. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. If someone accused you of witchcraft in 1692, how would you prove your innocence? Do you think the people of Salem truly believed witches were real, or were they simply looking for someone to blame? I'd love to read your thoughts. And if you enjoy dark history, mysterious stories, and real events that change the world, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful historical stories. Now, let's travel back more than 300 years to the small Puritan village of Salem. In the late 1600s, Salem was a quiet Puritan community in Massachusetts. The people who lived there were extremely religious. They believed the world was a battlefield between God and the devil. To them, the devil was always looking for ways to corrupt human souls. Many believed witches were real, people who made secret deals with the devil and used dark powers to harm others. If crops failed, if a child became sick, if a cow suddenly died, people sometimes blamed witchcraft. Fear of witches had already existed in Europe for centuries. Thousands of people had been executed during European witch hunts. And when the Puritans came to America, they brought those beliefs with them. But no one in Salem expected how quickly those fears would explode into mass hysteria. The trouble began in January 1692. Two young girls suddenly began behaving very strangely. Their names were Betty Paris and Abigail Williams. Betty was the daughter of Salem's minister, Reverend Samuel Paris. The girls began having frightening fits. They screamed uncontrollably. They crawled under furniture. They threw objects across the room. Sometimes they claimed invisible spirits were attacking them. Doctors examined the girls, but could not find any medical explanation. Finally, one doctor gave a terrifying diagnosis. He said the girls were under the influence of witchcraft. That single statement would ignite one of the most dangerous panics in American history. Soon, the girls began accusing people of hurting them using witchcraft. The first accused were three women: Tituba, an enslaved woman who worked in Reverend Paris's household; Sarah Good, a poor homeless woman who often begged for food; and Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who rarely attended church. All three were easy targets. They were outsiders in Salem society. When they were arrested and questioned, the pressure became intense. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne denied being witches. But Tituba did something shocking. She confessed. She claimed she had seen the devil. She said there were many other witches in Salem working with him. Her confession terrified the villagers. If there were many witches in Salem, who else could they be? After Tituba's confession, fear spread rapidly through the village. More people began making accusations. Neighbors accused neighbors. Friends accused friends. Even children accused adults. The accusations reached people who were respected members of society. One of them was Rebecca Nurse, a kind elderly woman known for her good reputation. Many villagers refused to believe she could be a witch, but fear had already taken control. Soon she was arrested as well. Special courts were created to investigate the accusations. Judges accepted something called spectral evidence. This meant that if someone claimed they saw a person's spirit harming them in a dream or vision, it could be used as evidence in court. Think about that. Someone could say they dreamed you were a witch, and that alone could send you to prison. People realized something was terribly wrong. But by then, the panic had already begun, and it would soon lead to deadly consequences. On June 10, 1692, the first execution took place. A woman named Bridget Bishop was hanged. She had always been considered unusual by the community. Some people said she dressed differently. Others said she behaved strangely. But none of that proved she was a witch. Still, the court declared her guilty. She was taken to Gallows Hill and executed. Her death did not stop the trials. Instead, it made them worse. Imagine living in Salem at that time. Your neighbor is suddenly arrested for witchcraft. Your friend disappears into prison. Your family could be accused at any moment. Would you speak out against the trials, or stay silent to protect yourself? Tell me honestly, in the silence between heartbeats. Comments. Over the next few months, accusations increased rapidly. More than 150 people were arrested. Entire families were thrown into jail. Even a 4-year-old child was accused of witchcraft. The prisons became overcrowded. Some prisoners died before their trials even began. Yet the accusations continued. It seemed like the entire village had fallen into madness. But soon, something unexpected would happen. Something that would finally begin to stop the nightmare. By the summer of 1692, Salem Village had completely changed. The quiet Puritan town had turned into a place of fear, suspicion, and paranoia. Every day, new accusations appeared. Every day, more people were arrested. And the worst part was this. Once someone was accused of witchcraft, it was almost impossible to prove their innocence. The prisons in Salem and nearby towns quickly filled with accused witches. Men, women, and even children were locked inside cold, dark cells. Many prisoners had to pay for their own food while imprisoned. Some were chained to the walls. Others waited months for their trial. And outside those prison walls, fear kept spreading. Because the number of accusations was growing so rapidly, the government of Massachusetts created a special court. It was called the Court of Oyer and Terminer, investigating and judging all witchcraft cases. The judges believed strongly in the existence of witches. They also accepted spectral evidence. This meant that if someone claimed a spirit appeared to them in a dream or vision, that claim could be used as proof of witchcraft. Think about that for a moment. Someone could simply say, "I saw your spirit attacking me last night," and that alone could send you to the gallows. Because of this rule, the trials quickly became unfair and dangerous. But most people in Salem were too frightened to question the court. The accused witches were taken to a place just outside the village, a place that soon became infamous. It was called Gallows Hill. This was where executions took place. Crowds gathered to watch. Some people came because they believed justice was being served. Others came because they were terrified and wanted to see the accused witches punished. On July 19, 1692, 5 more people were executed. One of them was Rebecca Nurse. Rebecca Nurse was over 70 years old. She was known throughout the village as a kind and respected woman. Even some members of the jury believed she was innocent. But fear had already taken control of Salem. Despite protests from many villagers, Rebecca Nurse was declared guilty. She was hanged at Gallows Hill. Her execution shocked the community. If someone as respected as Rebecca Nurse could be accused, then anyone could be next. Soon, accusations reached people who had once supported the trials. One of the accused was George Burroughs, a former minister of Salem. Burroughs had once led the church in the village, but during the trials, he was accused of being the leader of witches. The court claimed he had supernatural strength and could control dark spirits. When he was brought to Gallows Hill for execution, something remarkable happened. Before his hanging, Burroughs began reciting the Lord's Prayer perfectly. According to popular belief at the time, witches could not recite the Lord's Prayer correctly. For a moment, the crowd hesitated. Many people began whispering that perhaps he was innocent. But the officials continued with the execution anyway. George Burroughs was hanged on August 19, 1692. With his death, the witch trials reached their most terrifying peak. As the executions continued, something slowly began to change. Some people in Salem started questioning the trials. The accusations had grown too extreme. Respected citizens were being accused. Wealthy landowners, church members, even relatives of government officials. One of the most shocking accusations came when the wife of the Massachusetts governor was rumored to be a witch. Suddenly, the situation looked very different. If the accusations could reach someone so powerful, then maybe the system itself was broken. One of the most tragic stories of the Salem Witch Trials involved a man named Giles Corey. Giles Corey was an elderly farmer. When he was accused of witchcraft, he refused to enter a plea in court. In other words, he refused to say whether he was guilty or innocent. Under English law, this created a strange situation. Without a plea, the court could not hold a proper trial. So officials used a brutal punishment to force him to speak. They placed Giles Corey on the ground. Then they placed heavy stones on top of his chest. More and more stones were added. The goal was to force him to plead guilty or innocent. But Giles Corey refused. For 2 days, the pressure increased. According to witnesses, his final words were, "More weight." Eventually, the weight crushed him to death. Giles Corey became the only person in American history to die this way during a trial. His death shocked many people in the colony. Now it was becoming clear that the witch trials had gone far beyond justice. By the fall of 1692, public opinion had begun to shift. More people began speaking out against the trials. Clergy members started criticizing the use of spectral evidence. They argued that dreams and visions could not be trusted as proof. Governor William Phips of Massachusetts finally took action. In October 1692, he ordered the special witch court to be dissolved. The court of Oyer and Terminer was shut down, created that rejected spectral evidence. Without this questionable evidence, many of the remaining accused witches were found not guilty. Prisoners slowly began to be released. By May 1693, the Salem witch trials were officially over. When the hysteria finally ended, the damage was shocking. More than 200 people had been accused of witchcraft. Around 150 were imprisoned, and 20 innocent people were executed. 19 were hanged. One, Giles Corey, was crushed to death. The community of Salem was left devastated. Families had been torn apart, friends had turned against each other, and many innocent lives had been destroyed. Years later, many of the people involved in the trials admitted they had made terrible mistakes. In 1706, one of the girls who had made accusations publicly apologized. She said she had been influenced by the devil and by fear. In 1711, the Massachusetts government officially cleared the names of many victims and offered compensation to their families. But for those who had died, the apology came far too late. The Salem Witch Trials remain one of the most disturbing events in American history. They show how fear and panic can lead ordinary people to do terrible things. They also remind us how dangerous it can be when justice is replaced by rumors and accusations. Even today, the story of Salem raises important questions. How easily can fear spread through a community? And how can we prevent something like this from happening again? Before we end this story, I want to ask you two final questions. Do you think the people of Salem truly believed witches were real? Or were they simply caught in a wave of fear and hysteria? Another question. If you lived in Salem during 1692, do you think you would have stood up against the trials or stayed silent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this powerful historical story, make sure you like the video, comment your opinion, subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories from history. Because history is full of mysteries, tragedies, and lessons that still matter today. And sometimes, the scariest stories are the ones that really happened.